So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you all about how sleep affects every aspect of your health and well-being. So essentially how important sleep is. And to do that, I'm going to introduce you to what I call the pyramid of our health and well-being. So we're just going to go ahead and kind of fill each of these sections in. And obviously each section is going to represent an aspect of our health and well-being. And I'm going to kind of explain to you how they all kind of interlink and particularly how sleep impacts all of them. So we're going to start with the top four kind of pillars, I call them. So over here in pillar number one, we have diet, okay? Obviously what we eat and how much we eat, everything relating to that. In pillar number two, what we're going to have is movement. So that might be physical activity, exercise, everything in that kind of topic. Next up, we'll have weight. So weight is obviously perhaps your body fat percentage, your BMI, your waist circumference, your body composition in general, the ratio of muscle to fat that you might have. Perfect. And in the very final pillar, we're going to have stress, or kind of the mental side of things. So we've got our four pillars across the top: diet, movement, weight, and stress. And obviously what we're missing is this kind of base area. And as you may have imagined, the base of our pyramid is sleep. So sleep is kind of the foundation of your health and well-being. It's the very base that these four pillars sit on top of. And essentially, just like any good foundation, if you have a good strong foundation and you have a good quality of sleep and you sleep enough, then the foundation is nice and supportive of the things that sit on top of it. So in this scenario, obviously, it will be supportive of those four pillars that we just discussed. So if you have a good quality and a good length of sleep, diet, movement, weight, and stress become that much easier to manage and influence and change for the better. However, as many of us might already be kind of accustomed to, or we can relate to, if you don't quite have a good quality or a good length of sleep, then those four areas become even harder to kind of manage. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about in this video. How is that actually the case? So let's begin with diet. So how does sleep impact your diet? Well, in a very kind of simple way, essentially, your sleep, amongst other things, your body clock, regulate all of your hormones. And these could be hormones for many different things, but on the diet side of things, is the hormones that control your appetite and your satiety, or your fullness. And these hormones, one is called ghrelin, and the other is called leptin. So ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin is your hunger hormone, essentially. It controls your appetite. It tells you when you are hungry. Leptin kind of does something very different. Leptin tells you when you are full, when you have had enough, when you are satiated, essentially, when you have consumed a sufficient amount of calories. So why is this important with regards to how it relates to sleep? So as soon as you drop below around 6 or 7 hours of sleep, what happens is ghrelin is amplified and leptin is suppressed. So essentially, following on from a bad night's sleep or several bad nights' sleep, your appetite is going to be increased, so your cravings and your appetite obviously will go skyrocketing. But quite crucially, your ability to tell when you've had enough is going to be suppressed. So not only do you feel hungrier, but your ability to actually tell when you've had enough is severely hindered. And obviously that can then lead to overeating, which is going to obviously lead to gaining weight. And that kind of links us over to our second point here, which is how does sleep affect weight? So in an indirect way, through your diet, sleep can affect weight because of those two hormones that we mentioned there. It can also affect it in a different way as well. So what has been shown is that if you place two groups of people on identical diets, but one group gets sufficient sleep and one group do not get enough sleep, what happens is they can lose the same amount of weight or a similar amount of weight, but crucially the type of weight that they lose is completely different. So some studies have indicated that at least 50 to 70% of the weight that someone might lose if they're not getting enough sleep would be coming preferentially from muscle as opposed to from fat. So if you put that into numbers, think about it this way: if you were in a deficit, losing weight, but you're not getting enough sleep, and let's say you lose around 10 kilos of weight, right? Well, theoretically, that could mean that at the best case scenario, 50% of that weight is going to be from muscle and 50 from fat, which is not really ideal. But worst case scenario, it could be even worse than that. It could be 70% of that muscle is 70% of that weight is going to be lost from muscle, and only 30% coming from fat. So really bad place to be. And there's a few kind of potential explanations behind this. Well, essentially, you've got to look at why do we store fat? Why do human beings store fat? Well, part and parcel, it's a reserve for energy, right? Well, where do you get energy from? Well, a variety of places. You get energy from food. You get energy from fat, as we said. You get energy from sleep, right? you're not getting enough energy from sleep, your body's going to try and take it from other places. So it might try and take it from food. Well, that's not enough. What about taking it from fat? Well, let me suppress leptin so that I don't feel hungry and I overeat and I can gain more fat. Great, okay, now I've got some more energy reserves. Well, not just that, but actually, why don't I try and preferentially get rid of muscle? Well, as we know, muscle is more metabolically active than fat. So you burn more calories or you have a higher energy expenditure the more muscle mass that you have. So the body's thinking, well, I don't want to burn more calories. I need to conserve calories because I'm in this kind of deficit from the deficit of sleep. So as you can see here then, it directly affects not just your ability to lose weight, but it affects the type of weight that you will lose. So let's move on to possibly the simplest one of the 4 pillars. How does sleep affect your movement, your activity, and your exercise? Well, obviously, with regards to your inclination to be active and to engage in exercise, if you feel lethargic, you feel tired, and you don't feel like you have energy to go and move around and be active, well, that inclination is going to be affected directly by lack of sleep, right? But even if you engage in exercise and activity, what's been shown in many studies is that your recovery from that physical activity and exercise is going to be hindered in the absence of good quality sleep. So things like coordination, reaction times, muscle contractions, so on and so forth, resting heart rate, and many other things. So your cardiovascular ability and capacity, your coordination are going to be negatively impacted by a poor night's sleep. So onto the final pillar, which is of course stress. So how does sleep affect your stress? Well, they're quite intertwined. They kind of play off of each other and they create this kind of vicious cycle. But quite simply, when you do not get a good quality of sleep, when you do not get sufficient sleep, that is treated by the body as a type of stress. So lack of sleep is a type of stress. And what that causes is a rise in your stress hormones, namely adrenaline and cortisol. So when you do not get enough sleep, adrenaline and cortisol are raised and released into the body to kind of give you that kind of signal that something's going wrong, and this is that lack of sleep in this scenario. And as a result of adrenaline and cortisol being released into your body can also naturally produce more glucose as well to give you more energy to, well, address the issues that are arising. So as you can see, sleep is absolutely fundamental to our health and well-being. So in a way, to summarize everything that we've looked at, you can kind of look at lack of sleep as a lack or a deficit of energy. And what happens when you enter into a deficit of energy is your body will have certain, let's say, fail-safes or safety nets and reactions to this. So if we just recap what those reactions are. So not getting enough energy from your sleep. Well, okay, let me try and take some energy from food. Let me try and gain some extra fat, which is a reserve from energy, by overeating. Let me also, if I'm in a deficit, preferentially get rid of muscle, which burns more energy than fat. Again, then maximizing fat. Let me try and reduce the inclination to move and exercise, which is going to burn more energy, calories. Let me increase my adrenaline and cortisol, my stress hormones, which in turn raise my glucose levels. And glucose is also used for energy in the body. So we'll be looking in further videos all about how to improve your quality of sleep and your sleep hygiene and your length of sleep as well. But that's it for today.